Hi, I'm Jessica.
I'm Jenna.
And I'm Stephanie.
And you are listening to Pastors' Wives Tell All,
A podcast by pastors' wives for church leaders and anyone desiring to take a peek inside our glass house.
We are breaking down walls and crushing pastors' wives stereotypes within the church.
We want pastors' wives and other ministry leaders to know that they are not alone in this. Plus, this is basically therapy for the three of us with a whole lot of dance parties. Woo,
Hey friends, welcome back to Pastors' Wives Tell All. Today, you're going to notice something a bit different. Our voices are going to be missing from this episode because our husbands are taking over and answering the questions you submitted on social media. So get ready and keep in mind, they can be quite sarcastic. So keep that in mind, guys. Keep it in mind. Laugh, listen, and I know you're going to learn a lot. Let's get to it.
Welcome to Pastors' Wives Tell All, and obviously today is just a little different, where we are taking over and we are being recorded in front of a live studio audience.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we're taking questions from you and going to answer them to the best of our ability and all of our expertise and infinite wisdom and knowledge so that we can be a benefit to you.
Yeah, we're pretty excited about this because some of these questions, we can really hone in on as far as, what our wives can do for us.
I like it.
So, yeah, because it's very, very important about that. And also, this is interesting because there's a lot of church questions in here that I think we're going to actually help people out because a lot of church expectations are wrong. Cool. Yeah, good. And then our wives are here, so this is beneficial to our marriages too.
Yeah, I think it's cool. They have their journals out. Like
I know they're taking notes
while we
I like
record
that.
this.
I like that. So
it's getting hot.
So it's very good. Very good.
Good.
Now the empty stairs are here.
Yes.
All right. So we're going to jump into these. All right.
Start with
So
a hard one.
Yeah. The first question is this: tips, advice on how and when's appropriate for a youth pastor or hubs to ask for a raise.
That's you.
That's me. Yeah, youth pastor. Here's the thing. Honestly, a lot of this depends on the culture of your church and the financial position of your church, and that can vary year to year. But I do believe that based on inflation, based on all this stuff, there should be something in place in the budget to get a raise at the end of each year. Whether percentage-wise of your salary, however that works. If your church is not in a good position to do that and you're struggling financially, I do believe this, and you can take it or leave it. My family comes first, and if I am not able to provide for my family, and the church is not willing to make that happen, there's nowhere in Scripture where I see where I'm supposed to suffer because the church is not willing to pay. Now, I'm not saying that everything's wrapped in money, and I'm not saying that God won't provide. What I am saying is there has to be that accountability from the pastor to the church and the church to the pastor, and part of that is financial. If you have to walk in and say, "Can I have a raise?" then there's probably other issues besides money there.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think my own personal thought is a youth pastor shouldn't have to ask for a raise. It's the pastor's responsibility to take care of his staff and oversee. That's part of the flock, I think. So I agree with you. Aside from the asking, I don't think that it should have to be asked. I think it should be planned. That would be well planned for a church to look at that, considering the factors as well.
Yeah.
At least a cost of living raise, which I don't know that cost of living has ever gone down.
No,
recently.
not in my lifetime.
So something should be given, yeah. I don't know that's helpful to whoever asks.
I don't know,
right?
but like it's like tips, advice. Like my thing is that should happen before you need a raise.
There should be an expectation
There should be,
already when you
yes.
walked into that position. It
So-
should have been communicated more
Yep.
clearly
Yeah.
in that. But let's say that it's not, right? So that's the advice on a youth pastor who is in a position to have to ask for a raise. I would set up that appointment and set up that meeting just to have a real conversation of saying, hey, cost of living has gone up. We haven't gotten raises in a year or 2 years or ever. Is this something that we can look forward to? Or is there something that I need to do as the youth pastor to increase my income, whether that's some type of outside work or whatever it may be? I would go into the conversation that way of, hey, I'm just curious so that I can plan better for my family. If I was asking a pastor, that's the approach I would take.
Well, it's also like if you do that approach, I also think that if there's something you're having to do outside of the work of the church, you need to tell them, hey, my hours during the day may change.
Yeah.
Like if you can't do that, then give me a few hours a day if I need to go out and do a side job. Like give me that freedom.
Yeah.
You know, and if they're willing to do that, then I mean, by all means, that's great. But and again, it goes back to there's some churches that are struggling, and I get that. Man, I can't. I'm speaking from a position where we're in a healthy church, healthy financially. So this has never been an issue.
Yeah.
But I do realize that some churches year to year struggle, some more years than others. But yeah,
Walk into that meeting planned and prepared.
Yeah.
To have a kind of a goal or something that you can say, okay, if we're not going to get one, because that could be a possible answer, then go in there with an idea of what you're going to do. Don't try to make it up on the fly. Think through it, pray through it, walk into it confident that those are two options that's possible.
Bringing solutions to the table is a big deal.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I think they just reading the question, they probably didn't ask because they're in a church that has a plan for that. Because like you said, if you have to ask or set up this meeting, then there's probably not something already established to provide a raise unless you've been there 2 months and already expect a boost or something. But I mean, I'm not in youth ministry now. I have been in multiple previous churches, and we were in a role like that, newly married, prior to kids. And I had to have that conversation. Hey, we have a kid on the way. Jenna's going to be stepping back from some work to take care of the kid, obviously. And their answer was no. And so we had to know what our next move was if we didn't get the yes we asked for. So we had to close that door and move on because we couldn't keep doing it at that capacity with no increase. So, yeah, like you said, just having a plan, knowing what you're willing to do next or step away from if the conversation doesn't go the way you expect it to.
Next question was this. It says, let's talk church plants. When do you know it's time to walk away? So there's some angles we can go here. So let's get into that, guys. What's the first angle?
So let's look at an unhealthy angle would be that someone is frustrated with their church. They're angry with a church member. They're angry with the leadership. And they are in their head thinking, you know what, we could do this better on our own and we could start our own church. So, you know, the angle of let's talk church plants. When do you know it's time to walk away to plant a church? The unhealthy way would be to think that someone can do it on their own because they're angry and upset. That's not really how church plants work. Church plants it's a calling, and it's something that God is leading you to do. It's not to rob Peter to pay Paul type mentality of I can do this better and I'm going to take a group of people with me. I would never do that. I would never suggest doing that. That's more so, in my opinion, sinful and rebellious. And if God's placed people in a position of leadership, I have to understand and know that God is bigger than the person that's in leadership that I'm in disagreement with. Just because I'm in disagreement with someone doesn't mean that I go and plant a church. It's not going to work. It's not going to be healthy. It's going to be out of rebellion. And I would not recommend it, because I do believe that people will be held accountable by God in a church split. And so the unhealthy way to plant a church would be frustration in a church split, causing a church split. So when you know it's time to walk away, if that's the mentality of I'm frustrated and I'm mad, I would say, one, be bold enough to go talk to your leadership in a healthy way, not in anger, throwing stones, or whatever the reason may be or the disagreement, but approach the leadership, communicate your grievance, and either get to a good place mentally, spiritually with that leadership, or know that maybe it is a season of change for you and God has another place that he wants you to go. And you need to pray through that. Just because there's a grievance doesn't mean it's time to go plant a church. I would suggest spending time in prayer and seeking God's will on it. And if it's time to go from that church building or in that church, then be okay with that and find a place. But don't try to take a flock with you, and don't backstab the church that you were a part of. Just know that God changes seasons for us, and that's part of the process.
I think when you're talking about church plants, and like I said, we don't know the direction of this question, but we had a buddy of mine. He started a church years ago in Virginia Beach, and it did really well. They started in houses, neighborhoods, and developed a church, and that church grew. And he just recently, within this past year, stepped away. But what he did walking into that church was purposely disciple someone to take it. So I think if you're saying, when do you know it's time to walk away, is when you know you can hand it off and the church will be fine. The church will grow. The discipleship will continue. The direction, the vision will continue. So I would say, like, if you're in that position and you feel like you're being led to walk away, and you can hand those reins off to the leadership and know everything's going to be okay, that's good. I do believe this, and I fully believe. Success in the ministry is when you walk away or you're called to a different place, and the ministry that you establish at that church continues to go. Like, if the ministry stops because you leave, it's built on you. It's not built on the ministry. It's not built on a good foundation. So knowing that you can walk away and everything would be okay is a good, healthy place to be. And I would start, if you don't have somebody now, I would start pouring into people and just say, hey, I wouldn't look at them and say, I'm going to walk away in a year or two. I would look at them and say, man, I want to really invest in your life, and take that step. I think that's key.
Discipleship,
practical, biblical discipleship, all that. Yeah.
I haven't been a part of personally planting a church or leaving a church to launch something else. There was a season of our life where I felt like we were continuously drawn to startups. And I don't know if it was just, I was a bivocational worship leader, so people knew that I wasn't attached already to a church. So if they started something, they'd say, hey, can you come lead worship for a few months and kind of help us get off the ground? And there were a few of those that were just very, I don't know if unhealthy is the right word, but there wasn't vision, there wasn't a team built. And so the ask was so different than the expectation of, like, hey, can you come lead services for a few months? Which turned into, we need somebody in kids ministry. There was a lot of, not manipulation, but just like, we're not building a team. There's not momentum to this. And so you felt the pressure of, like, I'm not just coming to lead worship. You need me to do this. You need me to come paint walls. You need me to. And so we were getting pulled into something that we didn't sign up for. And so there did come those moments more than once, even where Jenna and I would have to have a conversation of, like, hey, how long are we sticking around? Like, we didn't sign up. This isn't, it feels weird to say, but like this isn't our church. Like we didn't sign up to. This isn't our group. I mean, there were a few that we attached to that like just were not our people. Like we literally showed up on Sundays and helped them pull off a service to reach the community, but they just weren't our people. Like we weren't doing life with them throughout the week. I wasn't on staff, so I wasn't in meetings or decision-making process. And so it was like, it got to a point where it was like, this isn't going anywhere. All you're doing is putting more weight and pressure and expectation on us when this is what you asked us to do, and now this is what you expect us to do. And so there were conversations of like, hey, is this the group of people that we're in the trenches with, or is it time to kind of step out and say, hey, y'all are gonna have to find somebody else? And so those were difficult conversations. And I don't know if that's the context of this question, but I think church planting is messy. And back to what you said, Jonathan, like it is a calling. And I've seen a lot of churches launch or plant out of frustration at their previous place. And I just don't think that'll ever be blessed and anointed, because you're launching out of pride and frustration, not like we feel called to these people or this community or this city. And so there's always going to be that. Even the teams you build are just going to be yes people that are also frustrated with what you were frustrated with. And so that's hard. But yeah, to me, kind of how we've navigated the last 20 years of ministry is like when we feel that nudge or the Holy Spirit prompting something and kind of pressing on us, like we've got to pause and pray and think through like, why are we both feeling this way? And that doesn't always mean jump ship. But when you feel that nudge, especially when both of you feel it separately, it's time to have a conversation of like, there's a next step. There's a move coming soon.
Hey guys, what is a food your wife loves that you dislike?
Pickled beets out of the jar. It's the most disgusting thing. It's purple. It stinks. It's disgusting. And I think it's sinful.
Yeah, I think that sounds disgusting.
That's just not.
Just that comment alone changes my view on Jessica.
Yeah.
Like it really does.
It does. Me too. Me too.
I don't understand that. My wife doesn't really have a food that I like get disgusted by, but the things she puts in her salads, it's kind of weird. Like she'll do she'll do some frou salads every now and then, and I'm like, just give me a house salad. Put some grilled chicken on it. That's fine. Yeah, croutons. That's fine. Like,
what makes it
frou?
frou?
I don't know. It's like just things I don't never heard of before.
Does she put cottage cheese in her salad?
Oh,
some people do that. That's disgusting.
She may have before.
Oh,
like
and those radishes. People like radish. Do you like radishes?
I'm not a big radish.
Okay, Jessica can eat a radish, and they're like 2 degrees shy of hell after you start chewing them up, right?
That's very true.
Like they're hot. I don't know why anybody would eat those for fun.
And this is an unpopular thing because some people like this stuff, but my wife loves the bread and butter pickles.
Oh, those are horrible.
I don't.
No.
What?
Only from Boar's Head though.
The ruining of a pickle.
Like she only does the Boar's Head bread and butter pickles, but she'll
There's like
sit
a Boar's
there.
Head recall right now.
There's
so
a Boar's Head recall. There's been a lot of issues with my wife lately, so that may be it.
The pickles.
The pickles.
It could be. Mine's radishes. Yeah.
Like you like when you get that breath.
Yeah.
The pickle breath.
Yeah. Well, try pickle
like
beet breath.
I can while the kissing just is not there.
I was about to say, I know we're not diving into that context yet, but salt and vinegar chips, pork rinds, like when you're laying in bed at night chomping on those, like that's going to affect how the rest of the night goes.
It does.
So
It does.
not a big salt and vinegar fan.
Well,
and maybe she knows that and that's intentional. It's always like,
it's also like, man,
hey, you want to
that's
watch TV?
great.
And
You eat pork rinds in the bed, and it's like one bite, and it's like this mist of crumbs goes
just
everywhere.
everywhere.
So if there's someone eating pork rinds in the bed, not that ever happens in my house, but if it does by chance, I'm crawling into the bed and feel like I'm on rocks and crumbs because I'm laying on
it's like there's sand in the bed.
Yeah, like
it's
there's sand in the bed, and it's coming from pork rinds in the bed. Who does that?
Yeah, our idea of Netflix and chill and their idea of Netflix and chill is two different things.
Netflix and salt and vinegar.
That's horrible. Next.
Yeah. All right. Next. Here's another question about our wives. Does your wife get snappy before guests come over?
Oh man, you talking about 100-mile-an-hour cleanup mode?
Yeah,
it happens. Flipping chairs, tables.
Yep.
We've got 3 dogs, so
You had 4 dogs before.
Yeah, one of them
We don't
died.
have-
We'll just not talk about it. 3 dogs. So we get these little dust bunnies sometimes that just like tumbleweeds across the So we're rapid fire going around with a vacuum,
Yep.
sucking them up so that guests don't think that we live in our house. It's just a.
My wife likes to clean the house like nobody lives there.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like when people come in, it's like, do y'all actually use this space?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, we don't. Like, it's untouchable.
Gosh, I credit that back to I regret the first time we ever went to IKEA. And they've got those staged housing living rooms that are perfect. I think since that moment, she expects the house to look like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, leave some underwear out. Like when people come over,
They wanna know.
We want them to feel like they're at home.
Yeah.
We say, hey, whatever. Make
Look,
yourself
like-
comfortable, but we're obviously uncomfortable because we don't live like this.
Well, I grew up, this is kind of crazy, but like when I grew up, my mom had a clothesline in the backyard.
Yep.
My grandmother did.
Okay, like this weird, like we had a dryer. I don't know why she used the clothesline every now and then, but like every now and then there would be clothes out in the clothesline. And it's like people would like ride by your house and see all the clothes on the clothesline.
Well, it looks like you've been working.
It looks
Right.
like there's been something happening.
Yeah.
So when people walk into my door, I want there to be something happening. Like, so I'm cool with clothes on the floor. I'm cool.
Yeah.
Like, I'm cool with shoes by
Socks.
the door.
Yeah.
Look, we got a little dog now, and I leave my flip-flops by the door. Okay, so a couple days, I'm trying to take the dog out, and my flip-flops are gone. So my wife cleans up my flip-flops. So now she's got a basket by the door with a bunch of shoes on it. But the problem is she puts my flip flops at the bottom of the basket.
You don't know where they're at.
So I was like, I gotta reach and tear every shoe out of there.
Dude, the struggle is real.
It is. It's
Because
there.
I've
It's
got
there.
a shoe basket in the closet that Jessica wants me to put my shoes in, which I do majority of the time. Yeah. However, when I go into my closet, I find a pile of clothes that aren't mine on my shoe basket.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't get to it. This
Yeah,
morning,
amen.
I'm putting on clothes this morning, and all of a sudden she goes, I'll do
Praise,
this later.
praise.
And it's a whole pile of her clothes on my shoes.
Yep. I feel your pain.
I don't understand
I
it.
feel your pain.
Do you ever put your shoes on her clothes basket? Like I feel like,
I should.
yeah.
I think I should. That would
I
be
think
good.
you should. And then the other thing is if I clean, she comes behind me and re-cleans. It's like she asked me, "Hey, can
Didn't
you
do
help
good
me?
enough.
Can you help me?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll help you." And then I go clean, and then next thing I know, she's right where I was cleaning. I'm like, "I helped you. I did this." She's like, "You didn't do it right."
I can't relate to that, so I won't chime in.
It's crazy.
You know,
You can't relate to that?
No.
I don't know.
I've never had that
You've
issue.
never had that issue?
so
Go ahead.
It's,
Y'all did it
it's-
right the first time, then we wouldn't have to come back behind.
whoa,
Do it
live
right.
studio
Do-
audience.
Somebody from the
doesn't
crowd
get to
is
shout
shouting.
in.
Yeah,
Security.
this is not
That's
working
security.
out. Right.
If she
Yeah.
speaks up one more time, we're
Take
going
her
to
out.
thank you.
So
Take her out.
I think this next question is not on here, and I think it's worthy to be asked because it's a very hot topic in households today. How often do you change the bed sheets?
Once every 6 months. I mean, that's a good thing.
You know,
Are you supposed to change them?
Are you supposed to change?
I believe that it should probably be done at least once every 2 weeks, probably.
Once every 2 weeks.
Yeah, clean sheets, right? Like you sleep. The things that you just need to clean some sheets.
It depends
Well,
how often you're eating those pork rinds. Honestly, like
Maybe that's the why behind needing to. So
Yeah.
I was just
Yeah.
curious.
All right, guys, we're going to combine some questions here. We've had a little fun, but we're going to combine these 3 questions. I'm going to say them and then we'll talk through them. It says, how do you keep boundaries? Okay. And then the next one is ADH people pleasing and the never clocking out that the job is stressing our family dynamics. And then, am dating a pastor. How do I maintain my individuality and not succumb to church expectations? So that's kind of all pointing to boundaries, really.
Yeah.
Of how do we establish those boundaries? So, how do we want to address that?
So let me take the one about dating a pastor and maintaining your individuality. The church world is sometimes messy, and it's a calling, I think, to be a pastor's wife, not just dating a pastor and you have no involvement in the church. That's almost like it would be a mixed yoke kind of thing, wouldn't it? Like, am I wrong here? So
Yeah.
I think that if you're dating a pastor, you can maintain your individuality. You don't have to lose who you are by any means. And you're not married to the pastor, so there is no true expectation of you in the church. However, as the relationship progresses, I think that you need to begin to consider what a pastor's wife looks like, because it is demanding at times. It's a heavy load at times. You can't just be completely disconnected from that. No, you're not the pastor, but you are the pastor's wife, and women will come to you needing advice, needing wisdom, wanting wisdom from you. And you do have some bit of a responsibility to lead well in that position. I think that's just part of it. So don't lose your individuality at all, but don't go into that relationship blindly as it progresses, thinking that there is nothing that's going to be expected of you in that role, because there is.
Yeah, I agree with that, but there's also doesn't mean you have to say yes to everything.
No, absolutely.
Like if the church asks you to do nursery and you don't want to do nursery, say no.
Yeah, tell them you don't work well with kids, and they may not come out alive.
They may not come out. Yeah, like that's great. But yeah, I think we need to understand that in your own individuality, what do you offer spiritual gifts? What's your talents? What do you want to be involved with? Mm-hmm. And before you ever get married to this man, you should already know the dynamics of the church. And so your expectations, yes, there are times you're going to get blindsided. I mean, my wife sometimes gets asked questions and she looks at me like, how do I do that?
Yeah.
Like, what do I do?
Like, you can't really say, hey, I'm going to date a pastor and I'm going to become a pastor's wife, but I'm never coming to church.
No, you can't do
That's not going to work. That's just not going to work.
Yeah, it's not. But I do believe that, again, it goes back to there needs to be that boundary of you can say no. Mm-hmm. Like, this is not my calling. This is not my gifting. No. And so, yeah. The other question is ADH people pleasing and the never clocking out. What do y'all think on that, Ian? You got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm ADHD and people pleasing, so I've already forgotten what y'all just said. I think a lot of it, I mean, all the questions about boundaries come down to it's seasonal. I mean, our boundaries have had to be different in different seasons of like how old our kids are. School year versus summer, and who's taking kids and picking them up. Now they're playing sports and things after school. So like boundaries change with your seasons. As they've gotten more involved with ministry and they're traveling a lot too, boundaries have had to change in my context to allow what they're doing to happen. So I think a lot of it just it comes down to continuously having conversations. Like years ago when we weren't having conversations about boundaries, it would always have to get unhealthy before it just kind of exploded. And then that's where boundaries were drawn, because it was like, you're doing this too much or you're never whatever. And so we weren't being proactive about those conversations. It would just become too much and it would explode. And then we'd be like, all right, we got to scale back. And that's where it's hard, because if you give the church will take you full time for free any day of the week. Yeah. Not that any of us work for free, but I think in ministry, you can continuously put hats on your head that weren't your hats to wear. And the church will just allow that to happen. And so the longer you do that, it's harder later on to scale back and say, hey, I can't do X, Y, and Z anymore, because you've done it for so long. They now, that's part of your job title, which it was never intended to be. And so having more boundaries up front allows you to say yes to more things later. And then just also being honest, like with your church staff or team, and just, hey, we're in a season right now where my wife's traveling a lot. Both kids are playing a sport. I'm not going to be able to be here till 5 every day, or I'm not going to be able. So what is that? Depending on what the expectations of your staff are, if I've got to hit a certain number of hours, then I'm going to come in an hour early so I can leave an hour early, or I'm going to eat lunch at the church instead of going out for an hour and a half. So just figuring out really what your family needs most, what the church does expect from you, and then how do we meet there in the middle. And as soon as you get that into play, it'll probably change 6 months to a year down the road. So it's constantly evolving.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, also, I will just add one thing. And I know this may go against norm, but do not tell your church members that you'll be there anytime they need them. Like, don't make promises you can't keep.
That's good.
And And when I say that, I'm talking about the family dynamics. Is if someone calls me when I'm at home and I answer the phone and they want to go on, I'll look at them and say, hey, or I'll be on the phone and say, can we set up a time to talk about this? And I don't mind telling people, hey, I don't care if I'm playing a board game or playing basketball with my son or like hanging out and playing with my daughter or whatever. It's, hey, I'm hanging out with my family. Can I call you? I mean, because they only do that one time, so, and there are times we got it wrong. There's times where we've done what we've come to the call as soon as they call, and it's not healthy. But I would say that. But boundaries. I don't know if this is just a resource y'all can look at. There's a book out there called Boundaries. I'm a firm believer in it. And one thing it says in there is every no you say is a yes to somebody, and every yes you say is a no to somebody. So define those boundaries. Don't let anybody cross in. Also in the book it says you got a fence around your yard and you have a door to your house. You control the door and you control the gate to the fence. They don't, so manage that. So
yeah, there's another. If you're talking about resources, we can put all these in the show notes, right, ladies? Maybe. There's a book I read years ago. I think it's called Choosing to Cheat by Andy Stanley, and the whole premise is like you're either going to let work down or your family down, and so you've got to choose at some point. Like if you just do everything work asks for, your family is going to get the shaft, and if you only always spend time with family, then you're not going to fulfill your responsibilities at work. But somebody's always going to get cheated in the equation, and so. Learning who that's going to be.
And also, some of these questions and the answers that we're giving, we're not talking about walking into your office tomorrow and throwing a wrench into the whole deal and like losing your job. But this is a process. Yeah. One thing at a time. Take a step. Minimize one area so that you can maximize another area. Like, just start the process of something rather than doing nothing. Don't go in there and say, well, I'm not coming in today because I ain't been with my family for 2 weeks. No, that's not going to work. But, man, look at your calendar. Set aside some time. Have these conversations. Put it into practice one moment at a time so that you can be better. Yeah.
Yep. Good deal. All right, on to a different question, kind of a different direction. How do you manage seeing family at Christmas, like each side of the family?
We don't,
man. I don't even want to see like Jessica's family. I just don't want to
see. I'm opposite. Like I don't want to see my family.
I just love, and I'm just kidding. Christmas is home. Like for us, Christmas is at home, and I never want to be away from home for Christmas, at least Christmas Day. Now, during that season, we can travel around, but for Christmas or Christmas Day, I never want to be away from home on that. That's just me. And if we're going to go visit and go other places and see people, it's usually before or it's going to be after, but not the couple days leading up to it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, our family, both our families lives out of town, so there's a lot of juggling there, and sometimes it's hard, but I mean, we make it work.
And I'm fine with them coming. If they want to come to my house on Christmas Day because, our families are older, they don't have young kids, then that's fine. But home, I want to be home.
Yeah. Good. Another question on this last page here, not last question, but last page on this one. Have you been impacted by purity culture? If yes, how so? I'm going to go ahead and start this out. I have not been impacted as much as women in my generation have, the millennial generation. I think it's negatively been impacted, and I think there's results now that we're in upper 30s, moving into 40s. There has been a lot of negative impact based on that purity culture back in the 90s and 2000s, and even before that. So that would be more of how our wives would see that, honestly.
Yeah, I don't know that I was saved back then, so it doesn't really affect me at all.
Jonathan was the one that youth pastors were speaking against. Like, hey, if you have a boyfriend like Jonathan, walk away right now. Come to the altar and write his name on a note card. Yeah.
Put it on a cross that you're sacrificing.
Jonathan was definitely impacted by purity culture.
This is pastors' wives tell all, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I got you.
Praise God.
Okay, friends, if you have enjoyed this episode as much as we have, please help us spread the word on Facebook and Instagram.
If you didn't know yet, Instagram is where all the fun is at. From dance reels on Wednesdays to spiritual encouragement and laugh out loud posts in between, there is something for everyone.
And last but certainly not least, if you could take a moment right now to stop what you're doing and give us a rating and review, even subscribe to our podcast, this seriously helps other people find us who wouldn't be able to otherwise. Thank you so much for your love and support. We hope you'll tune in next week.